Hello and welcome to another episode of Life in Rural Japan. Today I thought we'd have a talk about these Akiya, abandoned houses. They seem to be the flavour of the month. Everyone's talking about them. You see videos about Japan's giving away free houses. I don't really think so. You know, buy a house for $10,000 or $20,000. Yeah, I don't know either. You know, like in Australia, house prices go up. In Japan, they come down. So you buy a new house, every year the value of your house comes down. Older houses aren't worth much. So it's not like in Australia, it doesn't matter. The house price just keeps going up and up and up. In Japan, it's the other way. They come down. But you know, like for 10 grand or 20 grand, I really don't think you'd get anything. Anyway, like the cheap houses, the cheap Akiyas what they sell in abandoned houses, they could be abandoned for 10 or 20 years. So you can imagine the state of them, you know. And like over here, see, this is an old house, you know. Let's sneak around here and we have a bit of a look. Now, you know, if you're getting a cheap house, this is the sort of thing you're gonna get. You know, it's got the wood on the side, all the wood's breaking off and coming off. It's, yeah, this sort of thing. You know, it's gonna need a lot of money in renovations, if you can renovate it. Like a bit of an earthquake and that thing could come tumbling down around your ears. So I don't reckon they're really that safe. But you know, a lot of these ones they're talking about what are cheap are way up in these little villages up in the mountains and away from nowhere. You know, you're up there. Now there's a lot of talk about these little villages. They might not even exist in another 10 or 20 years because people are just dying off. No one wants to live there. The kids don't want to live there. They want to get out of these little places. There's nothing for them to do. And you know, the kids these days, they don't want to do farming, and that's too hard work. You know, they don't want to be outside in the sun. They get sunburned, get brown. They want to stay white. You know, they have walk around with umbrellas and this sort of stuff. Even the boys, you know. Now makeup, cosmetics for men is off the charts. You know, all these young guys, they shave their arms, they shave their legs, you know, they put makeup on. They won't go outside unless they've got sunscreen on. Some of them even use like parasols, sun umbrellas, you know, before they go out in the sun. They don't want to get sunburned. So how are they going to work on a farm? You know, grow vegetables or grow rice or that sort of stuff. Do whatever it takes, you know. So these kids, they don't want to work. They don't want to live up in the mountains in these little towns and that. They want to live in the cities, work in an office or something or whatever, but they don't want to do that. So they try to get out. They're getting out of these little towns. I taught English on an island, and all the young kids over there, you know, they go to school, they live there, but as soon as they hit high school, they come over to the mainland and they go to high school over there. A lot of them will stay in a dormitory or something like that. They never go back to the island. They're done. You know, then they'll go to college or university and get work. They don't want to go back to the island. So, you know, this is an old place here. You know, don't get me wrong, some of the old Japanese places are really nice, they're beautiful, but they've been well looked after. You get an abandoned house for 20 years, you've got rats and animals living in there, and it just get moldy, and yeah, need renovation. The bathrooms and kitchen and toilet be all old. You'd have to renovate all that. You'd spend a lot of money, and then it's going to be hard to find work in those places. If you worked like from home on the internet doing, you know, graphic design or web page design or or whatever, you could it'd probably be okay, but you'd have to have some sort of income coming in. I think you're better off, if you're looking for a place, look at some of the smallest towns, you know, like where I live in a town. It's not that big, but you can get places, and you've got a bit of land, so it's quite good, you know. If you go into a city, you get like a postage stamp the size of the land, and your house takes up the whole bit of land. You know, out here where I am, you can get a decent bit of land and put your house on it, or you'd pick a used house up, and it wouldn't be too bad, you know. But I think the real cheap stuff, I think it could be more trouble than it's worth, actually. And yeah, I think you'd have a hard time living up in these places. And like these old houses, I know we rented one before we built, and it was shocking, you know. In winter, you couldn't keep the heat up to the place, you know. As soon as you heat it, it just comes out. Now see, look, this place here. This is why I wanted to come down here. This is an old place. So this is the sort of thing you'd be getting. See, all the boards are falling off. See, they're not insulated. How they insulate them, they put mud, they mix mud and straw together, like the straw from the rice, and then they plaster it in between. So that's your insulation, and it just doesn't work. And these places, like in winter, they're freezing. You can't get them, you can't heat them up, because they're all, look here, you got all glass windows. The heat just comes straight out of these, you know. And in between the rooms, they have like the Japanese style sliding doors, so the rooms and that. And in summer, they're stinking hot. You know, you're going through so much electricity and like Kero heaters and that. You've got them burning all the time. So, you know, these places are really old, and they need a lot of work. You know, if you were to buy something like this, you got to renovate it. It's going to cost you a lot of money. It's got to cost you a lot of money to renovate it. Well, you see, you're better off, I think, spending a bit more money and get something like this. It's sort of pretty new, you know, and I think you can live pretty comfortable. But you get some of these old places. Look at this one, it's just got corrugated iron on it down the walls. You know, these places are stinking hot in summer, freezing cold in winter. All this, you know, you can get a house for 10,000, and Japan's giving them away. It's all nonsense, you know. It's all nonsense. You get what you pay for. You know, you got the old saying, you get what you pay for. If something's too good to be true, it usually is. You know, and I reckon a lot of this stuff with this Akiya is too good to be true. You know, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, if you did find a really bad one, but it was really cheap, and it had a good parcel of land, buy it, knock the house down and build a new house there. You know, you got good land. But see, look at this here. You know, this old place here. You know, they're probably using that as a shed sort of thing, but it would have used to been a house. Would have been a house a long time ago. So yeah, a lot of this stuff with this Akiya you see on YouTube and that, it's just not nonsense, you know, it's not right. You know, I think to get yourself a decent house, I think you're going to be up around $100,000, you know. But you'd end up with something decent, you know, for $100,000. $100,000, you can't get anything in Australia. You know, in Sydney and that, everything's over $1 million. My brother was saying most people in Sydney have got house loans over $750,000. You know, that's a lot of money. But see, there's a lot of a lot of these old houses around in the country. So you probably could pick something up if you can get something decent. I think it would be okay, but I think you're better off trying to get something a bit newer, pay a little bit more, and I think you can have a good lifestyle, you know. Because like, if you could get something nice for 100 grand, you're not going to get anything for 100 grand in Australia, you know. And then you can do a bit of work and you're laughing. But this, buy real cheap houses, I think it's a bit of nonsense. You know, get a house for 20 grand, I really can't see it myself. You know, unless you're way up in the, you know, in the sticks. You'd be up in the middle of nowhere, and the house would be a wreck. The house would be a wreck. You know, like, got all the tatami goes moldy, and you know, if they haven't been living in the house for 10 or 20 years, it's been abandoned, you wouldn't know what state the place is in. The foundations and everything, you know, it could be like a big money pit. That's what I reckon, you know. That's my thought on the subject. But you know, like, so you've sort of got a new house tucked in here, but you've got an old thing behind. So you get what you pay for, you know. Yeah, see, that's a new house there. It's got a ramp, it's barrier free, so it's quite nice. So really, you do get what you pay for. If you think, oh, I'm going to go to Japan and buy a house for 10,000, and then I'm laughing, you know, I don't think you would be. You know, 10,000 is not going to buy you much. Like, as I said, a lot of these small towns, the government's talking about it. You know, like a lot of these small villages, they're going to be, you know, not extinct, but, you know, they'll just disappear. In another 10 or 20 years, there'll just be no one living in them, in these towns, in these little villages up in the mountains and that. You know, because as the people are getting older and die off, no new people are going in there. So I think that's a little bit what they're trying to do with these Akiya, is try to get more people to move in, but I think it's got a lot of problems. So you're not going to get anything for nothing, I tell you now. So that's my thought of it. So if you're thinking of coming to Japan and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to get myself an Akiya for 10 grand or 20 grand, I think you're on the wrong track. You know, like, if you get a job, if you got yourself a job, you can get a house loan. Loan repayments here are really cheap. You can fix them for the term of your loan. You know, if you've got a bit of money and then you borrow a bit, your payments are probably very cheap, and you get it paid off and you're right, you know. But I would go for something a bit newer, something a bit, you know, that's not going to give you trouble. You know, a lot of these old places, you get a good earthquake, they're just going to come crashing down. They will come crashing down. I can see it happening, you know. A lot of these places, a good wind would blow them down, you know. So anyway, that's my thoughts on Akiya. I think it's a lot of people trying to make it sound better than it really is. You know, I've looked on the web pages about them and that, and yeah, I don't know. I'm really doubtful. Okay, well, that's all for today. Just a short little video, but my thoughts on the Akiya, and you know what I reckon you're going to get for your money. You know, like, the house is going to need a hell of a lot of work. Okay, till next time.